Another element that's very interesting is that there's a certain inward-lookingness on the part of some countries these days. That countries that are somewhat disenchanted with the global economic system have problems in the sense that their people are not as positive about the global economy. They see the global economy, particularly the global financial crisis, as being disruptive to their jobs, disruptive to their communities, causing them to lose a lot of their savings. And this presents a problem because if countries turn inward and become somewhat more nationalistic, it makes it harder to have a well-functioning global economic system. Instead of their governments being able to think about making the global system work well, they're preoccupied with dealing with a whole range of domestic issues.
It's been us, the subnational governments, who have pushed energy efficiency, low-emission technology, forestry policies, transportation policies that have often become models for national action. I think a really good example is our demand for cleaner cars in California. We have special status under the Federal Clean Air Act. We can take action stronger than the federal government. We had 13 other states join us. The auto industry sued us in about 22 different courts around the nation. We started winning those cases, and as a result, President Obama announced a national standard for clean cars. So that's a perfect example of how local action can result in pushing our federal governments.
In 2008 was a year when more food was produced than ever before in history. It was a year when there were more obese people than ever before in history. It was a year when there was more profit made by food companies than ever before in history. And it was also a year where more people went hungry than ever before in history. I feel like you can't hold all of those things simultaneously without realizing that there's a really deep issue that's wrong with the way we move food around this world. Often when we talk about global hunger, we talk about innovation. Particularly, we talk about biotechnology and the need to increase yields. When you look at those numbers, of having more food than ever before, we actually in 2008 produced enough food for 11 billion people by the UNDP's count, which is far more than we'll have in 2050. When you look at those numbers, you realize that there's not really a food gap as much as there's an equity gap.
It's not frequent in international politics that the geopolitical consequence of borders disappear. It's not frequent in international politics that countries that live next door to each other become so comfortable with each other that they remove war as a legitimate tool of statecraft. But that's what's happened between the United States and Canada. That's what's happened between France and Germany, a border along which hundreds of thousands of people have died in the 20th century. But now you zip across that border in your rented Mercedes and you don't see a border guard, you don't see a customs patrol, you don't even have to go to an ATM and change your money. And that is magical.